In this video, we have a lot to discuss today. We're talking about, is Disney moderating? You hear a lot of people on YouTube, social media, what have you, and fan circles talking about how woke Disney is, how woke the Mouse House is. But are there signs that they're actually moderating, coming more towards the middle? They might be. We're also going to talk about this Fantasy Springs over at Tokyo Disney. We're also going to talk about this projection mapping that is now being shown onto Space Mountain. We're also going to dive into some Epic Universe. That's going to be a fun one, George. That's going to be a fun one. Up next on OG 55. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG 55. I am joined by the one, the only, Citrus George, the Italiano. George, it is always great to have you on board talking shop with me. I love doing these videos with you, brother. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely, and I love doing these too with you too. So, I mean, this is awesome. And for all of you who are watching this particular episode with these topics, buckle up tightly, keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, and we're happy to have you join along the ride with us. So,
Absolutely.
it's gonna be a bumpy one for sure. We got a lot to dive into, but before we do so, you can find me on social media. On X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could find me on the podcast, A Walk with Walt. You could now also find me on Instagram, the Disney Italiano. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Absolutely, absolutely. Welcome aboard, George. So let's dive into our first topic today. Is Disney moderating, right? We hear a lot of talk from these conservative circles. Disney, the Mouse House is woke, 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 right? And there's no change in sight. It just, they're doubling down on the woke. They're doubling and tripling down on it, right? I've been saying, and you've been saying it too, George, there is evidence of this company kind of moving towards the middle. Now, does that mean that, they're going to become, completely free of any kind of like progressive, aspects? No. I mean, they have it. I mean, it's Hollywood, you guys. All right. Okay. It's Hollywood. They're always going to be left leaning. But
Well,
there are.
and also too, I feel like that they should just try to keep it middle ground. I really don't think that they should lean one full way to the other, because if they're going to be a business to appease to everybody,
Right.
it's always best to have a middle ground.
Right.
Unless you're Star Wars, then you go the high ground.
Then you go the high ground. Exactly. Yeah, but so I was at the parks recently, and at California Adventure, I saw something that, in my opinion, kind of pointed to the fact that they are in fact moderating. I'm gonna pull up my screen real quick. Just give me a moment here. Okay, so this was at one of the stores in Buena Vista Street. Okay, now this is significant. It says here the Walt Disney Company has proudly honored those who serve in the U.S. Armed Forces and their families since the founding of our company 100 years ago. Now Disney is like doubling down pretty strongly on this sort of like pride in our military, pride in America. Right now, look. This plaque is correct. Disney is rooted in that Americana, right? You see it all over the place with Walt Disney's, when Walt Disney ran the company, when he founded the company, we saw a lot of that Americana, even in the opening day speech for Disneyland. The center of it is America, right?
But there was going to be an entire theme park dedicated to that.
Exactly. Disney's America.
This is America.
Mm-hmm. Right. But in the past maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 years, Disney has sort of separated itself from that kind of like, the America, like rah, 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 America, right? Like we've seen it, like even with the Main Street Electrical Parade, when they brought that back, they got rid of the big America float with the eagle and they changed it to, It's a Small World, I believe.
Yeah, It's a Small World, but they incorporated like other Disney characters in like It's a Small World format.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I like the new version of it. It's pretty cool, but like you're just seeing them sort of the past few years sort of minimizing it, right? This is a huge departure from what we've seen the past few years, kind of doubling down on this, like, proud of our armed forces and what have you. This is a much more conservative, in my opinion, sort of aspect, right? And hey, look, conservatives complain all the time. We have all the pride merch and this, that, and the other, and they get on social media and they complain about that. Okay, well, look, now Disney is providing merch that is leaning more towards the right. So, what do you think about this, George? I mean, do you think this points to a Disney company that's moderating, or maybe not so much? Am I reading too far into it?
I mean, I think Disney is on a good trajectory path on doing this kind of stuff because, as I mentioned before, it's best for them to go to the middle ground. You don't want to go fledged to the left. You don't want to go full fledged to the right because there is such a thing as going too extreme over one or the other. So to kind of keep themselves out of the war between the left and the right, it's always best just to kind of be in that middle seesaw, so to speak. And I think Disney is on the right path to doing this by honoring the country, honoring the people who served for our country, for which they still have the flag ceremony that they hold down at the hub at the very beginning of Main Street when you first enter in through the park. So I'm glad that they still incorporate that. They do. They also incorporate little mini ceremonies on Memorial Day, on Independence Day, on Veterans Day. I do know that Disney still heavily involves themselves with that true rich, Americano kind of way, especially when it's affiliating with the veterans. So Disney is definitely still moving forward, but I like how they added this extra touch that, for people who want to support the veterans alongside Disney, or maybe is a veteran family, that they can showcase that by adding this merch into it. So I think, kudos to Disney, extra brownie points for them for this.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I believe it was a Super Bowl. It might have been. I believe it was a Super Bowl. I could be mistaken, but Disney recently did, maybe a few months ago, maybe almost a year now, to be honest. But they did a sizzle reel for like the Walt Disney Company. I think it was early in the year, like it probably was Super Bowl because it was for the 100th, I believe.
Correct. Yes.
And they showcased all the franchises of the Walt Disney Company. But within that sizzle reel was a lot of Americana, a lot of this like a spirit of America. You had Captain America in there and all kinds of stuff. Walt's speech, opening day speech at Disneyland, things like that. So we saw elements of it back then. Even you're seeing it now. Now here's an interesting thing, and I want to give a shout out to contributor of the channel Alia Aloha for this next thing. Disney has recently gotten a new senior vice president and chief diversity officer of the Walt Disney Company. Her name is Tanisha Agramonte. Okay, now this is brand new. This was just a few weeks ago, I believed. Now, Alia brought up a great point in that Tanisha, if you go through here, and I'll show it to you guys. Give me just a moment. She has a history of working with the federal government and military and what have you. Okay. And I'll say, let me see if I can find here. Okay, here it is. Agramonte is passionate about supporting military families, veterans, first generation college students, and throughout her career, she has helped organizations become more inclusive and recognize the impact DEI has on business optimization. So here's the thing. This chief diversity officer, Tanisha, is heavily invested in military families, veterans, and what have you. So that's interesting. The timing here with this new merchandise at DCA, we get this new diversity chief, and now all of a sudden we're seeing pretty significant displays at the Disney parks now showcasing military pride, right? Pride for armed services. Is that a coincidence? I don't know.
No.
Alia brought up a great point, though. Maybe
I
it's
don't think
connected.
so. I don't
You know
think
that,
so. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think there's definitely a connection between that because of just the short amount of time. Now one can argue to say, well, how can they get the merch out, manufactured, distributed, and then out in the park in that amount of time? It's Disney. They could do anything they want. They could have had that stuff kind of sitting on the back burner, just in storage or in a facility. And then when Tanisha came along, it's like, you know what? Let's get this stuff moving. I'm a very, heavily supporter of, the military and our veterans, so if I'm going to be in here, I'm going to do some things my way,
yeah,
and but yeah, it's very interesting. It's a very interesting read of what you had. Anyone who is watching, if you want to go back and read that full description, definitely do so, because we just kind of skim through it on the
right.
channel. This isn't story time with Bell. We're not going to read everything from beginning to end here, folks.
I
So sorry.
can't. Thank you. No, we don't do story time with Bell here on the channel. Okay, look, I'm not going to name names, but there are content creators that will literally put an article up and just read you paragraph after paragraph. We're not going to do that here. You can read. Our audience is very smart. They can read. We're here to analyze and talk about it, right? But here's the other thing too about the chief diversity officer, which kind of plays into what we're talking about. I see a lot of this stuff, like especially when they brought on this new gal, right? Oh well, look at that means Disney's going to stay woke because they're doubling down on this chief diversity stuff, right? They brought in a new person, they didn't get rid of it, right? All these mega corps have these diversity officers. This is the patron saint of Comcast Universal, which is a perfect company, right? I mean, that's what I'm hearing. They do nothing wrong, George.
No.
They're doing everything right, right? They even have a diversity officer. Delilah Wilson Scott, Executive Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer of Comcast Corporation and President of Comcast NBC Universal. Okay, so they all have these diversity officers. And our good friend Alia had another fantastic point, which Alia tends to have fantastic points. She is absolutely brilliant. That's why we
She
absolutely love
finds
her.
she finds stuff that I never even would even think of, and then when she brings it to our attention, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Right, right. Well, she was saying here, she actually DM'd me, and I thought this was fantastic. Um, she was saying here, give me just a moment. Um, oh man, I hope I could find it. Okay, well, I can't find, but she was saying that basically that a lot of this diversity stuff that they're still doing might be for SEC reasons, which is a good possibility. Not necessarily for woke reasons. Oh, here it is. It says it says here, it says it helps them qualify for some SEC perk, I'm sure. So she's thinking that might be something with the SEC as to why they're kind of continuing on with these diversity officers and what have you, which is very possible, absolutely possible. But long story short, this is a good sign. This shows that Disney is moderating. They are coming towards the middle more. Like I said before, it's a Hollywood studio. Okay, if conservatives think that they're going to become, if Disney's going to become the Daily Wire or something, then you're living in La La Land. Okay, I mean it's not going to happen. They're always going to be progressive to some degree because it's Hollywood. But hey, look, kudos. They deserve at least some credit, which they will never get. By the way, I'm telling you right now, these people will not give Disney credit for this. You're not going to see very many videos about this. Now, I will say this: if people do make videos, conservative-leaning content creators do make videos about this merch and give Disney credit for it, well done, well done. But I have my doubts. I don't see much kudos ever given to the Mouse House. I just see a bunch of piling on and hating. But it's a good move. They should be doing this. Well done, Disney. Keep it up. Moderate, moderate, moderate. When you're a business, you want to attract as many people into your business as possible. You want to limit as much as you can, excluding really anybody. So this was a good move. Any final thoughts, though, George, before we move on to our next topic?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I feel like that Disney is in a good path for that. I think they have a lot of cleaning up to do as far as getting on the bad side on both sides of the spectrum. So I feel like that this is a good start, to kind of do things right, get back to their ways of kind of appeasing to everybody, because Disney is for everybody, and everybody should be, able to go to the park and say, you know what, I could relate to that, or I could relate to this, regardless of what your political side is, left or right. Everyone should just be able to come together at Disney and just have that sheer core value of what Disney produces, and politics should be out of the question.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And like I said a second ago, like if look, I hope I'm wrong. I hope there are a lot of more conservative leaning content creators out there in our space that showcase this and at least will give Disney credit for it. And if they do, mad respect to them, because I don't see a lot of that. I just see a lot of like, just piling on. And hey, look, you gotta also sprinkle in the good news. You can't just always hate everything, So anyone that does a video on that, then my respect to you then. My respect to you. Let's go ahead and dive on to our next topic, which is Space Mountain, which has been under refurb, now has projection mapping. Okay, this is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. This is from DL News Today, which is like a sister site or sister outlet of WDWNT. And this is from Shannon Michelson. Disneyland Park guests were surprised by new projection effects inside Space Mountain when it reopened following a 5-week refurbishment, but maybe more surprised by new projection mapping on the ride's iconic building at night. This is fascinating, okay? So it says here, the White Mountain now glows blue, yellow, and red at night. The colors appear to blend together to also create shades of pink, purple, and orange, my favorite color. What do you think, George? Projection mapping on Space Mountain. You love it, like it, hate it? What do you
know
feel?
what? I think everybody, us included on this channel, have been very strategic in Disney's route to kind of update Tomorrowland. And because there really was no update, it's kind of like just a standstill, so to speak. It's very, outdated. It needs its own kind of look. And I feel like that this is Disney's route to maybe starting that. I actually love it. I love that they added projection mapping to Space Mountain. It definitely showcases the attraction than it just being one steady color with lights around it. It definitely, and I think the color palette definitely fits. It gives like that 70s retro look, which I wonder if this is going to be the color scheme and the route that Disney's going to take Tomorrowland into the future, no pun intended. I wonder if they're just going to do like small little things, because I think we've also touched upon the notion before Disney touches any of the major attractions in Tomorrowland, just the overall outside aesthetics of the land, would be happy with. Maybe add some greenery, add some changes. So I actually am really digging the projection mapping, and also that could be a sign for future things to come as far as nighttime entertainment goes,
Right.
because they can pretty much now add anything onto that building when it comes to possibly like fireworks shows or even a separate nighttime show, sort of like how they do at Disney's Hollywood Studios in Florida on the Grauman's Chinese Theater when they do the animation show or the Star Wars show.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think this is the future of Tomorrowland. Absolutely. I think that this is a taste of things to come, right? I think that we're going to get a new Tomorrowland probably in pieces, not one big, opening day. It'll be like here and there, and we'll wake up one day, like in 10 years, it'll be all new, right? Basically. Kind of similar to what they're doing over there in New Orleans Square. They updated, Club 33 years ago, Kim Irvine, right? And then we got the Pelican Landing over there. And then now we're getting this new Haunted Mansion gift shop and that whole area and the queue. We've got Tiana's Palace. So little by little, we're kind of getting a new New Orleans over the years. I think Tomorrowland will be handled very similarly. I think what we'll see, though, is I think we'll see this projection mapping kind of bleed into the rest of the land. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they go back to like an all white color scheme from the 1960s to give themselves a nice little canvas to work with, get rid of the silvers and the blues and what have you, and just give Tomorrowland all white again. And that way at night, you can projection map onto the Star Tours building, you can projection map onto the Buzz Lightyear building, and you can really make the land come alive at night like you would never be able to do before. it would really change the whole vibe of that land. So I think there's a lot of potential with this. It's actually brilliant. I'm actually shocked that they haven't done it before. Sometimes the best ideas are the simplest ideas, and this is such a simple kind of no brainer. It works, and I think it's here to stay, and I love it. I absolutely love it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
we'll
agree.
see. We'll absolutely see. But that brings us to our next topic, which would be Fantasy Springs. We got an official opening date for Fantasy Springs. Okay, now this is in Tokyo. Okay, this is from the Disney parks. Fantasy Springs, the newest themed port at Tokyo Disney Sea, will open on June 6, 2024. Just in time for us to be there, George. We want to go in the summertime, right? So,
Absolutely. Yes. So
yeah,
we're hitting those dates
yeah,
appropriately.
yeah, exactly. Hopefully, we can make it down there. I'd love to, but it says here will open on June 6, 2024. The countdown is on, featuring 3 areas inspired by the films Frozen, Peter Pan, and Tangled. Which one will you explore first? Now, for those of you that are not familiar with what this is, and I can't really play the whole thing, but to give you guys a taste of what we're dealing with here. So this is concept art for the Frozen area, right? And then I mean, it's beautiful. It's very similar, very reminiscent to the one in Hong Kong. It's just in Arendelle. But look at this is the actual. It's not done yet, obviously, but this is her ice palace. I mean, this is
Jeez,
absolutely insane.
it's
How it?
massive.
Oh, it's massive. It's absolutely massive. It looks so cool. Then we have the concept art for the Tangled area. You know,
And I
Uh,
love how they transition it where they show like the concept art piece to like the scaled model and then it goes to the actual uh final product of what it's going to look like. I love how they do that.
yeah, exactly. And only in Tokyo would the finished product look even better than the concepts. I mean,
Exactly.
it's insane. You look at these models; they look pretty good, but then you see the real thing,
Look at
and
that.
it's like, oh my god! I mean, it's just gorgeous up against that beautiful sky.
I mean they got the Tangled Tower with the mountain and we get the Tangled Tower with a bathroom. So,
Yeah, you guys get the tangled bathrooms. Yeah, it's
yeah.
crazy. And this is
Major entertainment.
yeah, exactly. I mean, this is absolutely insane. Let me go ahead and expand my screen a little bit. Um, then they have a whole Neverland area, which again, the concept art looks really cool. But then you get to the real thing.
See, I think out of everything, this is the land I'm mostly anticipating because, with Frozen and Tangled, which I'm very much excited to explore, as well. But this is a land that's based off of a 1953 Disney animated classic, which a lot of times people, they think, okay, they're just going to go for Frozen, they're just going to go for Moana, they're just going to go for Big Hero 6. Well, in Tokyo, that's not the case. They're going back to a classic Disney animated movie and they're banking on people to enter Neverland, so to speak. And again, kudos to them.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And Peter Pan's yeah, it's an old movie, and there's elements in that movie that a lot of people would consider problematic. And so it's interesting that Tokyo, and I know it's a different culture and stuff, so it's a different set of circumstances, but they're going all in on Peter Pan, and maybe Peter Pan's a hot property down there in Japan. I'm not really
Maybe.
sure, but look at this, George. Look at this. This is
It's
Neverland. I
I
mean,
mean
is this?
the detail of that is just phenomenal.
I mean, it's absolutely incredible. Now, look, I will admit this. Okay, as impressive as this is, it doesn't beat a steel roller coaster over some grass. I'm sorry, it just no. I'm just kidding. And everyone at home, you'll get the joke when we get to our next
Yes.
segment. But I am kidding. I am absolutely kidding. But look at this, and I believe this is actually inside this mountain is the Peter Pan attraction.
Correct. So it's basically, as far as I know, the ride system is going to be like Flight of Passage. So I find it kind of genius of how, even though it's going into Tokyo Disney, that they kind of utilize that type of ride system mixed in with the mountain. Because when you go over to Pandora for Flight of Passage, because the show building's huge, so why not disguise it as a mountain? So it works out perfectly because Neverland has a big giant mountain, as their main centerpiece, and they have a flying type of attraction, but rather it be, riding on a banshee, you actually get sprinkled with pixie dust, so to speak, and you fly over Neverland with Peter and the children.
Well, and I think it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I've said it many times that I think Peter Pan, or really the 1950s era Disney animation, just is quintessential Disney. Just the way it looks, the way it's presented with the magic. You look at a film like Cinderella, which I believe was in the 50s as well.
Correct.
Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan. They really, that was like for me such a pinnacle of Disney animation, and it's just so classically Disney.
It's actually funny. You actually named those all three in the timeline when they were released. It was Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan.
See, we're animation nerds here on OG55, and that's, I mean, for me that's what got me into Disney in the first place, was animation. I mean, it wasn't the theme parks, believe it or not. I got into the theme parks after the animation, but yeah, I mean, this is beautiful. This is absolutely beautiful. I mean, of course, it's freaking Japan, and they do everything better. We know that. Yep. They're like the A+ student, here, and they get everything right. But look, I mean, this is what happens when the budgets are right, when the money is there, right, George? When the money.
Give me
the drop, some money, dropping on my money. Brand new money, brand new hundreds, got a bunch of zeros like a bag of new Funyuns.
Yeah, in all seriousness, though, we are really looking forward to this. This is going to be an incredible, incredible area. This is the best theme park in the world. I can't wait to visit it eventually with this guy down here. I think it's going to be just amazing. But yeah, June of 2024. So we're coming up less than a year.
Yeah.
This thing is opening. So we'll see. We will see. That brings us to our next topic, everybody.
And speaking of spending money.
Yeah, speaking of spending money, right? Yeah, this is... Woo! Look at that, everybody. They're spending money. And okay, before we get into this, okay, before we get into this, and I'm gonna be real upfront with everyone right now. I'm not gonna bash Universal. Okay, I'm gonna be fair though. Okay, I'm not gonna sugarcoat things that shouldn't be sugarcoated. Okay, we are allowed to criticize his company just like we're allowed to criticize Disney. I'm also going to praise Universal in this video, okay? So we're going to be balanced here. But to pretend like there's nothing wrong with this picture, as a theme park person, I think you're putting your head in the sand. I really, really do. Okay? But I made a tweet today, just like a couple hours ago, actually. There are elements of Epic Universe that are already looking insanely good. The massive fountain, Potter, etc. I would also include the Donkey Kong coaster in that. That's a coaster done right, by the way. Okay, that's how you theme a coaster, right? You can theme these coasters, okay? Then there are elements like this where you have a barely themed coaster. And when I said barely themed, I mean, I think I'm even being generous with barely themed. I don't see any theme here. Now, the queue, from what I understand, has a theme, okay? But the main portion of the ride, that is not a theme. It's over grass and cement walkways. Okay. Okay. So it says here, okay, then there are elements like this where you have a barely themed coaster over some grass. I'm sure I'll catch heat for this, but just being honest, willing to wait and see how it turns out though. So, this is the thing, okay? This is the issue I have with this. This is supposed to be, this park, Epic Universe, is supposed to be the thing that's going to bring Walt Disney World to its knees, okay? This is the thing that's going to bring Walt Disney World to its knees. That's my number one problem. This picture right here does not correlate with that rhetoric at all. Okay, number one. Number two, Universal itself has raised their own bar in the last 10, maybe 15 years. Really, ever since Island Adventure opened in 1999, they have been raising their own bar with things like Wizarding World and what have you. I'm sorry, Universal. This is not up to snuff for you. This is not what we're used to from Universal. You can do better. There's elements within this park that I do think are that look incredible, that I think are going to meet that standard and maybe even exceed it. The Potter stuff, the Nintendo stuff. I think that massive fountain, I believe it's in the hub. that thing looks insane, and that fits right into this theme of epic. I mean, that's beautifully done. You can already tell it's going to be amazing. But this isn't it, fam. This is not it. So I got some comments down here. This guy here, he says, Six Flags like. And I said, and honestly, I'm sorry, but when fans claim this will be the park that will bring Disney to their knees in Florida, then we see stuff like this. It's just a huge disconnect, in my opinion. What do you think, George? What do you think about this coaster? Do you think that this is something that, like, I mean, from everything you're hearing online about, this is going to bring Disney down, right? This is the Disney needs to respond with $1 billion plus response because of this. What do you think?
Yeah, when I look at this kind of coaster, and honestly, when they showed concept of this, even before they even touched ground to even start building this thing, I didn't understand why, because they gave the themed lands, it was going to be Super Nintendo World, that the classic Universal monsters, How to Train Your Dragon, and a third Harry Potter section for the resort. And then they show this coaster, and I'm thinking, well, what is this coaster supposedly designed after? Like, what is? And they just said, oh, it's about like the stars, being up, like with I don't even know the full backstory to it, but it has to do like with the central hub of the park, supposedly, which I can understand that to an extent. But when you have a massive roller coaster like this, it's gonna attract to the naked eye, where you're gonna have all these other themed lands, and then you're just gonna have this plain coaster just sitting out looking pretty, so to speak. And when I look at this, I think this is a coaster that would look good in Six Flags, that would look good at Cedar Point, that would look good at Hershey Park, would look good even at Knott's Berry Farm. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but that's just the aesthetics of a roller coaster that would fit those particular amusement parks or theme parks. But yes, when you have Universal and everyone is comparing them to Disney, and oh, Universal got Disney beat, and when, as you said, when Universal set their own bar back in 1999, when they made the greatest dark ride of all time, The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, which I
Right.
had the opportunity to ride. It's phenomenal of how they blend uh, digital screens with live action pyro and special effects and animation. And even the queue for that, for Spider-Man, is just phenomenal. And then you come, almost 10 years later with the Wizarding World. Okay, well, now we're like another decade in, on the bank of The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man and Wizarding World, and we get this. It's like I don't see the correlation where Universal was going with on here. It's almost like they had two separate meetings with
Right.
two separate groups of executives saying, okay, we're going to do, Super Nintendo World, we're going to do the classic monsters of Universal, How to Train Your Dragon, another Harry Potter. And then you have another group that's saying, well, let's do a central hub that's based off of like lunar and nova and solar and stars, and we'll do this roller coaster that's based off of that. Like, there's no correlation
Well,
to it.
well, it's interesting because like the theme itself, I dig the idea of like this kind of like this kind of like a constellation theme.
Right. But would you
But
put that in a theme park with all that other kind of IP?
right. Well, that and it's execution. Like this doesn't scream constellations to me or anything. And look, I'm willing to wait and see, right? Because obviously they're still constructing this park. There might be something that they add to this that make it amazing. I'm really doubtful though. They're already adding the landscaping, George. Like there's no way this is going to get anything
I
extensive in
mean,
terms of theme, right?
and yes, one could argue of saying, okay, well, Space Mountain's not heavily themed, which is somewhat true, but it still gives you the the notion you're in space. See, like when this is like about like with stars and everything, I'm not seeing, because yeah, again, you're outside, you got everything kind of open to you. So it's like I'm looking at gravel, I'm looking at pavement, I'm looking at grass. What does that have to do like with the being like with space, and as you had mentioned, like the constellation of stars and what have you? It's like I agree with you. I do like the overall notion of it. But yeah, it definitely the execution. The execution is done very poorly.
It's not there. It's not there. Friend of the channel. We love Theme Park Wizard. Absolutely love Theme Park Wizard. Check out his channel. I'll link it down below. Everyone needs to subscribe to Theme Park Wizard. He's a huge Universal guy. And he made the argument. We kind of got into this discussion the other day because a friend of ours, Ranking the Mouse, Sean Ranks the Mouse, says here, hot take, I'm slightly underwhelmed by what we've seen from this coaster. I hope the theming is tremendous. So other people are noticing it. Sean's noticing it. And long story short, Wizard replied here. He gave us 4 examples of the coasters, and he ended this tweet, and you can check it out here. You can read it all. But he ended this tweet with, so OG, seems about 50% of the coasters will be decently themed. And to me, that's not bad at all. But here's the problem, Wizard, okay? You have a park where the expectations for Epic Universe are through the goddamn roof. This is, like we said, this is the thing that's going to bring Disney World to its knees. And 50% are going to be decently themed. That's not good.
Okay, so and to that argument, if Disney did an attraction that was 50% themed,
he's not saying the attraction is 50% themed. He's saying of the coaster count, 50% of the coasters will be decently themed.
Gotcha. But even to that though, if anything was 50% of Disney,
right,
like people would be like up in arms, like saying, well, where's the other 50%? And again, this is not to knock Universal because it's just the sake of knocking Universal. It's because we know what Universal is capable of doing, just as much as we know what Disney's capable of doing. And I'm sorry, when you give us a roller coaster like this, that's going to be a next door neighbor to Harry Potter and Super Nintendo World, it's seriously, it's like it doesn't mesh well.
No, and I'm sorry. I know the Universal fans might make excuses for this, but hey, I expect more from Universal. I wouldn't want this in a Disney park either. This is not okay. And look, I know I'm going to get a lot of, well, OG, how do you theme a coaster? How do you make it? It's so massive. What do you do? Well, they did it with Expedition Everest, and not to say you can't see portions of track, but even the track is themed because it's like a mine cart or whatever, going through the mountains. So it looks like this kind of like realistic experience where the coaster is themed to this train car going through the mountain. It makes sense. It fits the aesthetics. Big Thunder does the same thing. Space Mountain, like you mentioned, George, it's a rocket, but you don't see the track. You're in a enclosed environment in the dark with stars, projections, and all that. There's ways to theme coasters, even non-coasters. Look at Indiana Jones Adventure. Look how they took this is a genius what Disney did over there with Indiana Jones Adventure. It's not a coaster, but they took that massive show building and they managed to hide that from you from within Adventureland. Okay, so don't tell me that Universal can't figure a fucking way to put this coaster in some sort of building or to theme around it to make it actually themed. They can. Yep. Here's the problem though, George, and I've been saying this for a long time. Mice Chat said it a few months ago when all those Universal creative guys left. They opted for the pay packages, all those executives. They opted for the packages to leave the company early. Mice Chat had an article saying that this park has seen budget cuts. Okay, we have a good source. I can't say who that person is. We'll just call this person Dude Trust Me Bro, like we have in the past. Has also heard from industry people that this park has seen budget cuts. I've even heard from our friend Theme Park Wizard, who recently told me that the Monsters attraction that was going to get a bunch of animatronics are now also going to get some screens instead of some of those animatronics. Okay, that was from Theme Park Wizard. So this park has seen budget cuts, and when you see things like this, where you have a steel roller coaster over some grass, you can tell where the budget fell out. All the money went to Potter and Nintendo. It's obvious.
Yeah. And honestly, even when you have mentioned Indiana Jones, another great example is Radiator Springs Racers. You have a huge mountain, but they incorporate an attraction within the mountain where it's like you look at it and you say, you know what, that may be an attraction, but you can't really tell because the outside is so pleasing that it's like it draws you to walk towards that to say, I want to know more about that. Like I want to know the background to this ride or this attraction. And that's actually just our past topic we were talking about with the Fantasy Springs over at Tokyo. You know, you have these aesthetically pleasing lands of Frozen and Tangled and Neverland, and it's like that's what a theme park is. This is something you put in an amusement park. An amusement park and theme parks are two totally different ball games.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I recently went to Knott's. Like again, actually, since I went with casual, I went again because I was really impressed with Knott's. I thought it was an absolutely lovely park.
Knott's is awesome.
It's great. Now, I will say this: some of the coasters over there are better themed than this. Ghost Rider looks better than this. That's in fucking Knott's. Okay, this is Epic Universe. This is the thing. Like I said, I'm gonna keep banging on this drum. This is the thing that everyone wants Disney to respond to. This is the thing that everyone wants Disney to spend billions of dollars.
And that's why Disney won't respond to it just yet. Disney's probably looking at this and saying, what is everyone so worried about? Like, it's a roller coaster. They want us to put out more money than what we can right now to answer to this. Now, to Universal's credit, Disney did so with Wizarding World. Why? It was heavily themed and aesthetically pleasing.
And
I don't see it. And exactly. I could foresee people going on this ride, but I can't see somebody taking the time to say, I'm going to go to Epic Universe specifically for this roller coaster.
No, and I know people are going to say, well, what about the Hulk, OG? I mean, that just has a themed queue and the rest of it's outdoors like this. Yeah, but here is the thing with that. Since 1999, which is when the Hulk opened, Universal has stepped up their game. Okay, that was a long time ago now, 1999. Okay, so we live in a new world now. Universal has done other stuff since then that has raised their bar. So to go back to 1999 standards, come on, like they should be beyond this at this point. I mean, and this is such an awesome theme. That's the thing that sucks. You can really do for okay. If you're going to have a whole area themed to the constellations and the stars and all that, you enclose the fucking ride like you do Space Mountain, and you do something like that to blow people's minds. You have the controlled environment where you can actually have stars and stuff like that. That makes more sense. Yeah. I don't understand it. So, but here, I'll have an open mind. Let's see how this thing turns out. Yeah. They're still building it, even though it looks like they're just about done with this portion because they're already landscaping the thing. Let's see how it turns out. There might be stuff added to it between now and 2025 that blow our mind. So we'll give it a chance. But as of right now, I'm not impressed with this at all. It looks cheap.
It kind of putting this right next to lands like Super Nintendo World and the Wizarding World. It's honestly just like how Disney has Cars Land, and right next to it is Pixar Pier.
Right.
It's like it's the same kind of aspect where it's like, okay, you got this immersive land where it literally feels like you're walking into the movie, the world of Cars. And then right next to it, you have a pier that is decorated in Pixar theme.
Right.
You know, I still enjoy Pixar Pier as I probably would still enjoy that roller coaster. I'm a thrill junkie. But when you just have that coaster and you're going to kind of hype it up to say, okay, Disney should be shaking in their boots. No, I'm sorry. They shouldn't be, and they're not.
Well, no. And again, one of the things I hear constantly too is, well, but Mario, you know, but because Mario's in that park, you know, it's Disney World's gonna be a ghost town, right? Because the Mario's coming to town. Mario came to town here in California almost a year ago, and Disneyland Resort is not a ghost town. In fact, just the other day, it was so freaking busy. If anyone at home has been watching this, and you've been to Disneyland or DCA recently, you can attest to this. It's been very, very busy. It doesn't seem like Mario coming into town has affected our numbers at all. Let's see if it affects the Disney World numbers. I don't know. Maybe it will, but it certainly hasn't affected ours. We're packed over here.
And I think, and I think honestly, for people. I'm sorry, that hit my funny bone. For people who can have the argument as There you go. Game over. For people that argue that, while Disney World is a ghost town right now, the main reason why that could be the possibility, well, a couple possibilities, is that because everyone is anticipating on Epic Universe, because everyone is anticipating Super Nintendo World and the Donkey Kong Coaster, because Florida is a travel destination,
Right.
that people can't do multiple trips, or they may be able to do that once in a lifetime trip with their family. So it's like, why not kill two birds with one stone? We'll just save our money, extend our vacation out a little bit, go to Walt Disney World, and still go over to Epic Universe. And Epic Universe is, it's going to be opening once we hit into the new year in 2025. So a lot of people could be banking their buck and just kind of doing just one big ultimate family vacation.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that might be why we saw a dip. We just did the Comcast earnings call with our good friend Seymour. That might be why, the Florida parks over there for Universal and even the Disney parks, in their last quarter have seen that dip. To your credit, George, it might be because people are holding off on those vacations until everything is open. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see. Very, very interesting. But George, I want to thank you, sir, for coming on, talking shop with me. If you could let everybody at home know where they could find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You could find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on the podcast, A Walk with Walt. You could also find me on Instagram at the Disney Italiano. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Absolutely, absolutely. And since we're talking Universal,
it's been an honor serving with you all.
There we go. And one more. Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode of OG55. Comment down below with all your thoughts on Epic Universe military merchandise at Disney parks right now in a big way. Is Disney moderating? Are they coming more towards the middle? I don't know. It sort of seems that way. Tokyo Disney, Fantasy Springs, projection mapping on Space Mountain, anything you want to talk about, do it down below in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching OG55. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.